Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into the heart of adventure with one of the most iconic films of all time, Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981. From daring stunts to unforgettable characters, this movie set the standard for action-adventure films. Follow Indiana Jones on his quest to recover the ancient Ark of the Covenant, as he faces Nazis, deadly traps, and the occasional snake pit. Whether you're a die-hard fan or new to the world of Indy, there's always something new to discover. So, buckle up as we take you through 23 things you never knew about Raiders of the Lost Ark. The decision to use Tunisia as a filming location instead of Egypt turned into a nightmare for the cast and crew. A wave of illness swept through the set, including Harrison Ford. On the day of a critical sword fight scene, Ford was so unwell that the complex choreography had to be scrapped. Instead, in a moment of quick thinking, Indiana Jones simply pulled out his gun and shot the villain, leading to one of the most iconic moments in film history. If you've ever watched the iconic opening scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Indiana Jones is chased by a massive rolling boulder, you've probably wondered how they pulled off such a heart-stopping sequence. Well, here's the thing, what you're seeing on screen isn't just movie magic. That boulder, weighing in at a whopping 500 pounds, was real. And the danger wasn't just scripted, it was very much real for Harrison Ford. When that massive rock came barreling towards him, he had mere milliseconds to dodge it. Talk about living on the edge. The stakes were incredibly high, with Ford's flawless timing keeping the scene authentic and unforgettable. This high-stakes action remains one of the most thrilling sequences in cinematic history. One of the most terrifying moments in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the scene where Indiana Jones stumbles upon his partner Sadapo, who's trapped under a mountain of tarantulas. It's a chilling moment that gives even the toughest of us the creeps, but what most fans don't realize is that this iconic scene was actually a bit of a mishap during filming. Steven Spielberg, ever the perfectionist, had a clear vision for the scene. He wanted to create an atmosphere so tense that you could almost feel the spiders crawling across your skin. But here's where things went wrong. The male tarantulas just weren't playing along. They were motionless, completely still, which is far from the creepy, crawling mass Spielberg was hoping for. This was a huge problem since the spiders were meant to give a sense of imminent danger, with each one creeping closer and closer as Indy inches towards Sadipa. In a bit of movie magic, an animal expert on set suggested a solution: introduce a female tarantula. Why? Well, it turns out that male tarantulas don't move much unless they're, chasing after a female. So, they brought one into the shot, and, just like that, the male sprang to life, scuttling around like their lives depended on it. Now, here's the kicker, they only had one shot to get the scene right. That's right, just one take to make it look as terrifying as possible. So, Spielberg, thinking on his feet, turns to actor Alfred Molina, who's playing Sadapo, and tells him to act scared. And what's Molina's response? In true comedic fashion, he says, "I don't need to act." And it's easy to see why. After all, with thousands of live tarantulas crawling over you, I think anyone would be genuinely terrified. But what's even crazier is that the entire setup for the tarantula scene, every single step, was done with meticulous care. The tarantulas used in the shot were real, no CGI here, folks. The production had brought in dozens of tarantulas, ensuring they could get that raw, authentic fear that only real creatures could deliver. Thanks to the quick thinking and creativity behind the scene, it became one of the most intense and memorable moments of the franchise. The Well of Souls, filled with thousands of slithering snakes, posed a logistical nightmare. Spielberg initially wanted mechanical snakes, but that was impractical. Instead, he demanded 7,000 to 10,000 real snakes. Spielberg's commitment to realism led the crew to supplement real snakes with cleverly disguised rubber hoses, which enhanced the visual impact of the scene. The Well of Souls scene was particularly nerve-wracking for Karen Allen, Marion, and her stunt double, who both refused to wade through the live snakes. Enter Steve Edge, the fearless snake handler. To step in as Marion's legs for a shot, Edge had to shave his legs and wear a dress, adding an unexpected but humorous twist to the production. Raiders of the Lost Ark was originally envisioned as an even more expansive adventure. Early drafts included a sequence set in Shanghai featuring a thrilling minecart chase. While this was ultimately cut from the final film, the concept was later revisited and incorporated into Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. One of the most iconic and terrifying moments in Raiders of the Lost Ark is undoubtedly the face-melting scene. It's that moment when the Nazis open the Ark of the Covenant, and, well, let's just say, things get ugly. Their faces literally start to melt off. This horrifying spectacle has left fans with unforgettable images of ghastly, gruesome disintegration. But how did they achieve such a chilling effect, and what went into creating this disturbing visual masterpiece? The credit for this mind-blowing effect goes to makeup effects artist Chris Wallace, who was tasked with creating one of the most gruesome yet fascinating scenes in cinematic history. Wallace used a combination of practical effects, artistry, and a good bit of ingenuity to bring the face-melting sequence to life. The process began by creating incredibly detailed casts of the actors' faces using alginate, a material often used for molding. These molds were then layered with gelatin, yarn, and wool, materials chosen for their ability to mimic human flesh and muscle. The result? Prosthetics that looked alarmingly realistic. But here's the thing, the faces weren't just left to sit there. To really capture that melting effect, the filmmakers used powerful heaters and even a hairdryer to slowly, methodically melt the prosthetic faces over the course of about 10 minutes. This intense process was filmed in real time, but when the final footage was edited, it was condensed into just 3 seconds of pure horror, 3 seconds that still send shivers down the spine of anyone who's seen it. What's truly remarkable is the way the filmmakers combined practical effects with the magic of time-lapse photography to make the melting process appear so realistic. The footage was sped up in post-production, making it look like the faces were rapidly disintegrating. But in reality, the process was far slower and painstaking, with each melting moment carefully planned and timed to perfection. Every wrinkle, every droplet of melted flesh, was captured with precise artistry, making it not only terrifying but also mesmerizing in its level of detail. The scene has since become legendary, both for its graphic nature and the special effects expertise that went into creating it. But beyond the technical aspects, this face-melting moment also has a deeper connection to the themes of the movie. The destruction of the villains by the power of the Ark is not just an explosion of violence, it's a symbolic end to the Nazis' greed and their ultimate attempt to harness something beyond their understanding. It's a fittingly grotesque way to show the wrath of the ancient powers. In the years since Raiders debuted, the face-melting scene has been the subject of countless fan discussions, and it's often cited as one of the most memorable sequences in film history. Fans have even posted their reactions to watching it for the first time, with many commenting on how it left them terrified as kids and still shocking today. For many, it's a defining moment of horror that solidified the film's reputation not only as an adventure classic but also as a movie that wasn't afraid to push the boundaries of what audiences could stomach. Media outlets have long praised Raiders for its groundbreaking effects, and the face-melting scene is often cited as a prime example of how practical effects can be more impactful than CGI. In an era where digital effects are commonplace, there's something incredibly special about the tactile, physical craftsmanship that went into this scene. It's a testament to the skill and creativity of the filmmakers and effects artists, who understood that sometimes, the most terrifying moments come not from what you see, but from what you feel, and with this face-melting scene, they made sure that feeling was something you would never forget. Fans of the film still geek out over the specifics of how this sequence was achieved, with many trying to replicate the effect in various fan videos or Halloween costumes. Even after all these years, it remains one of the most talked about effects in cinematic history. Whether it's on social media, in fan forums, or in YouTube videos analyzing the making of Raiders, this moment is consistently celebrated as a defining piece of filmmaking that combines shock, artistry, and a sense of dark humor all in one. For the moment when Dietrich's head is crushed, the special effects team created a hollow mold of the actor's head and rapidly sucked the air out to create the imploding effect. Spielberg was so impressed that he called it the most impressive effect I'd ever seen. Other effects crews later sought out Wallace to learn his innovative techniques. In 1981, the PG-13 rating did not yet exist, meaning the film had to be classified as either PG or R. The graphic nature of the villains' deaths initially leaned towards an R rating. To avoid this, filmmakers had to tweak scenes, particularly the gruesome fate of Belloc, ensuring that the film secured a PG rating. Though Spielberg directed the first 4 films, the idea for Indiana Jones stemmed from George Lucas' childhood fascination with adventure serials. Inspired by the adventure serials of his childhood, Lucas initially envisioned the project as The Adventures of Indiana Smith. It was only through discussions with filmmaker Philip Kaufman that the Ark of the Covenant became the central plot point, and Kaufman earned a story credit for his contribution. Eagle-eyed fans noticed an Easter egg in the Well of Souls, hieroglyphs featuring Star Wars droids R2-D2 and C-3PO. Though likely a fun reference, some have speculated that Indiana Jones and Star Wars exist in the same universe. George Lucas initially wanted to avoid typecasting Harrison Ford, having already worked with him in American Graffiti and Star Wars. Instead, Tom Selleck was cast as Indy. However, his contractual obligations to Magnum P.I. forced him to drop out just 3 weeks before filming. Spielberg then turned back to Ford, and the rest is history. Danny DeVito was originally in line for the role of Sallah but had to step down due to scheduling conflicts with his TV show, Taxi. Rhys Davis stepped in and made the role his own. Regardless of casting, it is worth noting that Sallah was portrayed by a non-Egyptian actor. Here's an interesting tidbit about one of the more unexpected moments in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the monkey's Nazi salute. Now, this scene, though brief, is definitely unforgettable for anyone who's seen the movie. But behind this simple yet controversial action was a surprising amount of effort, and a lot of patience. The monkey, who plays an adorable yet troublesome sidekick to Indiana Jones, was trained to perform a Nazi salute. Sounds simple enough, right? But in reality, it was anything but. The trainers had to use positive reinforcement to coax the monkey into performing the gesture. They'd hold a grape just out of the monkey's reach and wait for it to stretch its arm up to grab it. Simple as that, except for the fact that it took a mind-boggling 50 takes to capture the perfect shot. That's right, 50. This wasn't some random action, it had to be timed just right for the shot to be impactful, and the monkey had to hold the salute at the exact moment the camera rolled. But why go through all this effort for a single, quick moment? Well, it's not just about a cute monkey being mischievous, it's about context. The salute, although seemingly innocuous in the scene, was a clever way to sneak in a bit of dark humor and a subtle jab at the Nazis, who are, of course, the villains in the film. The filmmakers used this small but powerful moment to reinforce just how deep the film's anti-Nazi sentiment ran, and it was a nice way to create a surprising and memorable visual that still resonates with fans today. What's even more interesting is the way the scene was received. For many viewers, the sight of a monkey giving a Nazi salute was both absurd and hilarious. It perfectly fit with the film's tone, action-packed, dramatic, but also filled with moments of lightheartedness and quirky humor. The reaction from fans was a mix of amusement and disbelief. Some were amused by the sheer absurdity of it, while others were taken aback by how a monkey could inadvertently become part of such a charged historical moment, even in the fictional world of Indiana Jones. And let's not forget the reaction from the media at the time. Some outlets found the salute to be too controversial, while others praised the filmmakers for using humor to convey a serious point without being overly heavy-handed. This moment became one of those Raiders details that sparked debates among fans and critics alike, adding another layer of intrigue to the film's already complex narrative. Looking back, this quirky detail has only added to the film's charm. The monkey's salute might be brief, but it's one of those unforgettable moments that has stayed in the minds of fans for decades. It's a perfect example of how Raiders of the Lost Ark blended humor, action, and history in a way that made the movie not just entertaining, but also culturally significant in its own unique way. Raiders of the Lost Ark made archaeology seem thrilling, traveling the globe, uncovering mysteries, and fighting villains. Many real-life archaeologists have credited the film with sparking their interest in the field. In 1982, three young fans, Jason Lamb, Christopher Strompoulos, and Eric Sallah, began an ambitious project, a shot-for-shot remake of Raiders of the Lost Ark. They worked on it every summer and completed it in 1989. Years later, their remake resurfaced and gained cult status, even earning them a meeting with Spielberg. In 2014, they launched a Kickstarter campaign to fund the one scene they had never filmed, the airplane explosion. Some argue that Indiana Jones does not significantly impact the plot. The Nazis find the Ark regardless, and its power destroys them independently. However, the film's excitement lies in the thrilling chase, Indy's wit, and his ability to survive against the odds. Let's dive into a fun little piece of trivia about one of Raiders of the Lost Ark's most iconic characters, Marion Ravenwood. If you've ever wondered where the name came from, it's got a surprisingly personal backstory. Lawrence Kasdan, the screenwriter behind Raiders of the Lost Ark, was the creative mind who brought Marion to life. But her name, as it turns out, wasn't just plucked from thin air. It actually has a deep connection to Kasdan's own life. You see, Marion's first name was inspired by Kasdan's own grandmother, Marion. It's not just a name he picked because it sounded strong or memorable, it was a tribute to someone who had clearly made an impact on him. But the last name, Ravenwood? That one came from a street Kasdan passed by every single day while living in Los Angeles, Ravenwood Court. Imagine that, each time he drove down the road, the name Ravenwood would catch his eye, and before he knew it, he'd crafted a name that was not only meaningful to him personally but also seemed to perfectly suit the strong, independent, and mysterious character of Marion. What's fascinating here is how Raiders of the Lost Ark was shaped by so many personal touches like this, reflecting the influences of the people behind the scenes. This little nugget of trivia not only adds a layer of depth to Marion's character but also highlights how filmmakers often weave bits of their own lives into the stories they tell. It's not just about creating a fictional world, it's about embedding real, human connections into the fabric of the narrative. And you know what else is interesting? Marion Ravenwood's character was groundbreaking in a lot of ways. At a time when female characters in adventure films were often relegated to the role of damsels in distress, Marion was a bold exception. She's smart, she's resourceful, and she doesn't just sit around waiting to be rescued. She holds her own next to Indiana Jones, matching him in wit and courage. In fact, it's her strength and determination that help drive the plot forward, making her not just a love interest, but a true partner in the adventure. Instead of the 1981 Paramount logo, Spielberg opted for the one from the 1940s to better align with the film's time period. The name Indiana was inspired by George Lucas's Alaskan Malamute, Indiana. The last name Jones was chosen after Spielberg rejected the original choice. Smith, Pat Roach played multiple roles in the film, including the German mechanic killed by the propeller and the giant Sherpa in Marion's burning bar. He continued appearing in later Indiana Jones films, always portraying characters who met a grim fate. The film received 9 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director. While it lost Best Picture to Chariots of Fire, it won 5 Oscars for Best Art Direction, Best Film Editing, Best Sound Editing, and Best Visual Effects. Released on June 12, 1981, Raiders dominated the box office, staying in the top 10 in North America for 41 consecutive weeks and remaining in theaters until March 1982. It was the highest-grossing movie of 1981. In 1983, Raiders became one of the first major VHS releases. Paramount produced a record-breaking 500,000 copies, selling over 1 million by 1985, cementing its status as an early home video blockbuster. And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark and the fascinating trivia behind it. From casting choices to special effects wizardry, it's clear that this film set the bar for adventure movies and continues to inspire filmmakers and audiences to this day. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories from your favorite films. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep adventuring.